Let's talk about the when to eat piece. This is the other variable. We can narrow that eating window and keep blood glucose more at bay for longer just by narrowing that window. How do you feel about that when it comes to ketosis and when you're working with people, bringing that in as a tool?
Absolutely. I actually have a little clock in my book that's on the website too. It's all free. You don't have to give me your email or anything, that shows you when you should do what. Yeah, narrowing the eating window is great. And, there's the OMAD, 1 meal a day. If the only issues I have with any kind of, it's essentially a type of intermittent fasting. You still have to make sure you're eating enough food, that you're getting enough calories and you're getting all the nutrients you have. So if you're restricting how much you're actually eating, that's a problem. If you're restricting when you're eating, it's fine. And I think, and I'm speaking on behalf of what I've learned from Dr. Crystal, is, narrow your eating window down to about 8 hours a day is pretty good. And that you probably derive most of the benefits from that. And I don't think there's any harm in doing a fast once a week or once a month or something like that, because you have those other days when you can get the nutrients that you need. But don't take that to extreme. Like I hear people, I'm doing a 3-day, I'm doing a 5-day fast, I'm doing a 7-day fast. Well, after about 2 or 3 days, you start triggering, we call them selfish genes, which are the genes that think now that you're in starvation mode. And what they'll do is they'll slow your metabolism as much as 40%. So your metabolism is what's going to burn off that excess weight, if that's what you're trying to do. So you're working against your own best principles. But eating windows, shorten that. Now, the other thing is you shouldn't eat much of anything other than just drink water within a few hours of going to bed. 2 hours at least, going to sleep. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But one of them that is not well known is that most of the growth hormone you release. Now, growth hormone is released from your brain. It's very important for, obviously for growth, but for regeneration, repair, for staying healthy and so on. Most of that, like I think it's about 80% is released in the first sleep cycle. And I think you've had some people talk about sleep on your show, but you go in these sleep cycles, there's an architecture to your sleep, and you go into deep sleep and then you come out of it and you go into REM sleep and you go in and you wake up a little bit. So it's not, you just go to sleep and you wake up. You go through a kind of an architecture. And it's the first deep sleep phase, which is the first hour and a half sleep for most people. That's where about 80% of your growth hormones released. Now, growth hormone release, it's actually one of the few hormones that has a growth hormone releasing hormone and a growth hormone inhibiting hormone. So it's very tightly controlled. And one of the things that the growth hormone inhibiting hormone responds to is increased blood sugar level. So if you eat a lot of carbohydrate like pizza and then go to bed, you're going to raise your blood sugar level. That's going to cause growth hormone inhibiting hormone to be released at just the point during the day when most of it gets released. And it doesn't compensate as far as we know. So that's to be avoided if you want to optimize. We talked about optimal health, ultimate health. If you want that ultimate health, you shouldn't eat anything within about 2 hours of going to bed. Well, you could do fats and proteins. They won't affect it much, but not anything with sugar. So there are some sort of protein shakes and things, and actually Dr. Volek has written about those, that you can do just before you go to bed. And the reason for that is the protein shakes have different kinds of amino acids in them, and some of them are absorbed more quickly, like the type you get in whey, and then some of them, like in casein protein, they're absorbed more slowly. So if you want those proteins to be there during the repair and regeneration, I think most people know you do that while you're sleeping, then you want to have a nice healthy amount of those amino acids in your system when that growth hormone is released, because growth hormone stimulates the protein synthesis that does that regeneration repair. So don't eat fats and carbohydrates, but especially if you had a workout, just before you go to bed, you can eat a protein shake as long as there's no carbs in it, right? There's a different mix. There's basically sort of 50-50 casein and whey is pretty good for that short and long-term presence. But if you want to do one right after a workout, again, this is referring to some of Dr. Volek's work, 25% soy protein, soy isolate protein, 25% whey, and 50% casein. They've been working with athletes and so on, like college athletes and and they're getting the best benefits from that after workout, like right after workout. Again, no carbs in there, just fat and protein. So you can put in your MCT oil, you can put in your full fat cream, and mix that up with the protein and whatever, water, whatever you want to do, and that'll have some benefit there. So that's one of the things. The other thing, Jesse, to think about is the sensitivity to insulin. So that's not constant during the day. In other words, insulin has greater effects at some points and lesser effects at other points. And one of those points that has a lesser effect is right before you go to bed. So again, don't eat sugar before you go to bed. And I think Cynthia, I think, was referring to somebody. She said, "Oh yeah, there's this big like carb thing before he goes to bed." And I go, "Yeah, how old is he?" And she goes, "And he's 28 years old." And I go, "Yeah, well, he's 28 years old." So
Yeah, I think it was her son.
Oh yeah, okay. So he's invincible at 28, but wait till he's 40 or 58. I wouldn't recommend it at that age. So, but in the morning, you're more insulin sensitive. So if you're going to have something that has carbohydrate, now I usually eat like a handful of berries every day because they're loaded with phytochemicals that I think have benefits. Kind of like Dr. Lee and, the green tea and other things that he's talked about. Same idea. They're anthocyanins, that are in blueberries, for example. And so I eat like strawberries, blackberries, and blueberries. I try to get ones that aren't too sweet. So I'll eat those in the morning because we're more insulin sensitive. So your insulin's going to have a greater effect. So you need less of it to have the same effect, and that prevents hyperinsulinemia. Otherwise, stay hydrated. Like if you think about water, and I talk about that in the book as well, we talked about the standard, what do you do in the morning? Well, before any of those cornflakes and toast or whatever, people probably have a cup of coffee. And coffee is a diuretic and alcohol is a diuretic. So you get up in the morning and you're dehydrated because you haven't been drinking during the night. Maybe you got, water by your bedside or whatever, but not very much. So you're dehydrated. First thing you do is have a diuretic, which makes you more dehydrated. Right. And then during the day, you're probably working and you're not drinking enough water. And then at night, you start drinking alcohol, which is a diuretic. So you're losing excess body. So you go to bed dehydrated, you dehydrate during the night, you wake up and dehydrate. So to counteract that, start the day with like as much water as you can tolerate. Start with maybe half a liter of water. Try and drink like a half a liter of water first thing in the morning. It'll actually help you wake up and it'll help your bowels move and all that sort of thing. But it helps you wake up. And then just remind yourself to stay hydrated during the day. Not everybody is as sensitive to how much water they need. And as you age, you become less sensitive to those thirst signals. So especially as you get older, if you're over 50 or whatever, make sure you're deliberately drinking lots of water. So I have my tea here and I have my water here, and they're both handy. I always have water around and try and just every time I see it, I just drink it and refill it, right? So it's always there for me.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
7 out of 8 people are overweight or obese, which means they're metabolically unhealthy, which means they're sick. We have a phrase in kinesiology: you cannot outrun your fork. A bad diet is not corrected by a lot of exercise. And we know it's really effective at reducing obesity.